Okay, this is July 30th, 2016. This is session 3, and it's part 3. And, of course, this is the session that is dealing with Robert's life. And we're going to pick up where he left off at the last session, in part 2. Take it away.
All right, and here we go again. In more ways than one. When we last left off, we were talking about the gay issue, my being gay. There's clarification I want to offer on that topic. First of all, let me make the distinction between Christian and churchianity. To me, there's no such thing as Christian. You're either a Christian, in which you are truly living the message, and you are truly loving, and you are being the Christ every bit as much as I was, or at least attempting to be. Or you are a churchianitan, and you're judging. You may be loving when it suits your needs, but you're restricting and you're judging, and you're listening to somebody else tell you what the truth is instead of finding out within your own heart. If you look at the prophets in the Old Testament, a lot of them, especially like David, who became King David, he had something alive, a living relationship with and as the living God in some ways. It wasn't a matter of him going to the temple or synagogue and being taught. He had something that came from a living source, the most living source there ever can be. That's God. That's what Christians have. Christians have Reverend so-and-so, who may be correct in what he's saying in some cases and not in other cases. Or they have a book that they flop open and they think like it's a user's manual or owner manual to God. Not possible. You cannot contain God between the covers of a book. God's too simple. Not too big, too simple. God is the truth. You try to restrict the truth with do's and don'ts and rules, regulations, and religion, then you don't have a relationship, which is alive. You have a coffin for the mind, which is dead. And the truth will not maintain that. It'll vacate premises and look elsewhere. So, getting from that into the topic about being gay, we're going to get some clarification of that. In the Old Testament, as I have to refer to that because, you see, in my life 2,000 years ago as Jesus, I didn't say anything about being gay. It wasn't that they weren't around, they certainly were. But it wasn't a problem for me. I didn't view it as such a sin and a problem. When you look back into the Old Testament and the statement is made, man shall not lay with man as with a woman. Understand that in those days, women were viewed as chattel, property. Now, obviously, no one is property. No one can own anyone, ever. Men, women, for that matter, are human beings who walk on 2 feet, and our human beings who walk on 4 feet are God incarnated in a form that may be shared. They are complete. Each and every individual is the complete totality of God incarnated in a form that may be shared. So no one is property. Now, it didn't refer to any sex act. Another thing, if you look in the same section that says that if a man lays with a man as with a woman, then he's to be stoned to death. It also says right in that same section, you can find it for yourselves, you don't have to trust me, look it up. The command is given that if your child, if you are a parent and your child smart mouths you, as we would say, back talks you, or disrespects you in any way, then you are to kill that child. Now, that's barbaric. We're not going to kill children. Of course not. But for people who say, well, I think they ought to be shot dead or stoned to death, my next question is, oh, have you killed your kids today?
Yeah.
Of course not. But we need to understand the context and the times in which these things were stated. And furthermore, we need to understand the Bible is not completely the Word of God. A lot of it is the Word of man. Some of it is the Word of extraterrestrials. And some of it is divine inspiration. But it is not every word that proceedeth from the mouth of God through the pages of the Bible. Let me also clarify with you again, that
Amen, brother. Testify.
You got it. The Bible cannot be used to control or contain God. God's not there. God's here. In everyone. As everyone. I don't even like using the term in everyone, because then we get back to this, everyone's a little spark of the light.
Yeah.
Bullshit. The fact is, you each are the complete totality of God.
We're all children of God. We're all baby Jesuses that are never going to grow up.
God. Anyway, he had to say that. He loves to say that.
What, the baby Jesus?
Yes, you do. I'm going to take a step back in time from age 15 to age 6 in this story of my life, because it deals with the topic of tornadoes. I never want to be in one, but I am fascinated by them. I'm very curious. I've studied quite a bit about them. There's been an excellent series on TV called Storm Chasers, but I would advise anyone and everyone, don't ever think you can drive your vehicle into one and live through it. You won't, so don't. But the thing is, they're fascinating. They're frightening, but they're fascinating.
Yes, Dorothy.
I'd like to know how they form and how they can be controlled and even stopped. But to me, there's a rudimentary intelligence there, and it's one of rage. Perhaps it's a matter of the earth speaking out in rage and the way it's being treated at times.
I think so.
Now, when I was 6 years old, my parents and I went to a beach on the west coast of Florida called Indian Rocks, part of the Indian Shores complex. I won't say exactly where or anything. And we were spending our first day there. It was the morning of our first vacation day there. We had gotten there the evening before. And in fact, I think it was a Saturday morning. We had the radio with us. We brought it from home. We didn't have a TV till I was well into my 6th year. The announcer made a statement that there had been a water spout just off the shore a ways from us, and that it came on land and held together as a tornado. And then he gave the direction it was going. My dad said, that's coming from right where we are.
You were like 6th?
Yep.
It's like 55. 1955.
Yeah. And I remember my parents and I started praying that the funnel would lift and leave us alone. Well, when my dad mentioned the term funnel, I was seeing this picture of a metal funnel with a spout that you use in pouring gasoline into an engine like a lawnmower or something.
Or distilling hooch from.
But at any rate, it got dark all of a sudden. And I remember my dad saying the funnel must be over us. And then it went on past and got light again real fast. That was my first experience concerning tornadoes. When I was around 10 years old, I would have a different one. And well, let me go ahead and relate it. My parents and I were going to the Tampa State Fair. It was on a Friday evening, and the weather was socked in. It was thunder and lightning, wall-to-wall clouds, heavy rains. So we stopped on the outskirts of Tampa to go to a Morrison's restaurant to eat. We knew that the weather was going to be so yucky that we wouldn't have a chance to go to the fair. We were going to turn around and go home after we ate. And that was socked in for all night. Well, we were there half an hour. The whole time I'm thinking of bursts of light disintegrating the clouds and pushing the clouds apart. And so as part of me was actually out there slamming away at the clouds. Half hour later, we get out from the restaurant. The stars are out. Beautiful. Calm. No thunder, lightning, no rain, no nothing. My first attempt at influencing the weather. We went on to the fair, had a great time, went back home. The next morning, I talked to my mom about what I did, and she said, "Oh, Bob, I'm a little concerned about this because I heard an announcement on the radio this morning that there were 2 tornadoes last night that killed 6 people in Central Florida." And she said, "I hope what you did maybe stopped more from being made, but what if it's what caused them?" And she said, "You have to be careful what you do." And that has stayed with me to this day, the sense of, I never intended for anyone to be harmed by what I was doing. I just was trying to free up the weather so we could go have a good time. That was all. Now I'm gonna move us forward to when I was 15. At that period in my life, I basically tried to put the ET issue behind me. I knew it was a direct part of my life. I didn't want it, never wanted it. Not when I was little, not at any time. But I figured I could either live my life in fear every day or I could live my life. So I decided to opt to live my life. I knew they could come get me again at any time, and did. There was one situation where I was being chased one night through what seemed like concrete corridors. There were ETs, aliens, and some military people. One guy who had like 3 stars on his shoulder. Military uniform and medals on his chest.
Mm.
I had gotten a device that, for lack of a better word, it looked like a Art Deco stylistic letter opener, kind of.
Yeah.
Very lightweight, no moving parts. I wanted to find a way to use it against the ETs.
Wait, where'd you get this from?
From the ETs that I broke and ran from.
So you
abducted. I was being abducted that night.
Okay.
And
you were still on some craft when you had this thing.
Yeah, either on a craft or possibly even in an underground location.
Uh-huh.
Because the walls look concrete.
Okay.
And 2 military people caught up to me. This guy with all the medals, I don't know his name. He said, "Look, it's like this. You have a choice. You can either hand that weapon over to us because you can't use it anyway, or you can hold on to it and we'll break your fingers in order to take it from you, and then you can find a convenient lie to tell your parents the next morning."
Oh, what an asshole.
So I gave it up.
Yeah.
Anyway, during this period of time, my psychic abilities began leaping head over heels forward. They were growing exponentially. The term ESP...
We're still talking about the age of 6?
No, 15.
Oh, I'm sorry. Right.
The concept, terms like ESP, psychic phenomena, reincarnation, prophecy, predicting, psychokinesis became
telekinesis
everyday words in our house at a fever pitch. And it wasn't just me, it was my parents talking about me.
Yeah.
So this one day, for example, I was walking home from school. I got to the corner of our yard and I looked up at this tree and saw these really huge dead limbs, and they were an eyesore. The tree itself was beautiful, but these dead limbs they were an eyesore. And I was thinking to myself, okay, this weekend I'm going to get a rope, throw it around the limbs and pull them down. Well, I turned around, walked on towards the house, got up to the front steps for the front porch, and heard this crack, crack, kaboom. Turned around, and right where I had been standing, looking up at these limbs, the very ones I was going to take down were crashed on the ground.
There you go.
Boom
shakalaka.
Yeah. This is just one tiny example. When I was 15, I also began using my abilities to control the minds of others. It was on an experimental basis, and I quit doing it after that, for the most part.
You did it in school a little bit.
Yeah. I had two teachers who were known for homework. They were homework teachers. They would give homework on the weekends, even on Christmas vacations. And at the end of every class, they'd open their books, turn to page whatever, and tell us to do so, and answer the questions on, the bottom of page whatever. And bring in the results tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, one was a science teacher, the other was a history teacher.
Probably had no love in their life.
What?
I said they probably had no love in their life.
Could be. Anyway, so on the same day, I began zeroing in. I waited till they opened the book. They would open their teacher's book and say, okay, turn to page, and we'll say, for example, 267. And then I'd pour on the control as though I was speaking through them. Suddenly, their faces would go deadpan, like that, and they would start saying, there's no homework tonight. And then they'd close their book. I did that 2 times in a row with 2 separate teachers who were ready to give us homework. It backfired. The next day, the students and I, in these 2 classes, the teachers come up and say, okay, hand in your homework papers from last night. And we're all looking at each other like, what? Remember, last night, page 267, I assigned homework pages and the questions at the bottom of the page. And when they found out we all didn't have it, well, they assigned us double homework that day, from the day before that we didn't do and from the present day.
So in their mind, they did do it.
That's right. That's exactly what they said. I know I signed it. I assigned it. I remember assigning it.
Oh, boy.
All I did was I overrode them and channeled through them.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So
there was like a splitting of, would that be like? Would that be like a splitting of reality streams or something? In their reality, they did say it, but in the kids' reality, they didn't.
And I literally channeled through them, and they had no control over that. Now, of course, certainly there are moral issues here that I'm quite well aware of, and not to mention the fact that it backfired.
Yeah, well, you were testing the waters.
I was a kid.
Nobody was harmed.
Not really, just frustrated, not harmed. So this was natural. I remember, for example, one night, something very simple, the phone ringing at home. And my dad was getting up to go answer it, and I just turned to the wall of the next room where the phone was and said, "Shut up." The phone stopped immediately. And at that point, my mom's looking over at my dad's looking back at my mom. They're both kind of looking over at me, and they both got very sullen and quiet. So I was studying the works by Ruth Montgomery.
Oh yeah, I remember her. Sure.
I was also studying works by Edgar Casey
to
some degree at that time, more later on.
The Sleeping Prophet was the first book of his I read.
Amazing piece of work.
Yeah.
Terrific psychic and healer. I wanted to become a trance medium, but at that time I was not able to do it.
What's that?
What I'm able to do now at times, where you go into a trance and you channel someone.
Oh, channeling.
Yeah. Trance medium.
Yeah.
So at that time I was working on different techniques of meditation, just inward self-meditation. I was also trying to do work in areas of psychokinesis, being able to control objects without touching them. In some cases I could do it, but if I put concentration on it, I couldn't do it. I could put little lightweight pieces of torn paper on a table. Come on, concentrate, no effect. If I would get so frustrated, I'd go blow them in the name of. But I found out that you don't have to concentrate. And I'll get into that at a later time. My dog and I, by the name of Tiger, he was a Chihuahua mixed breed, developed tremendous ESP together. He could literally sit on the bed, totally quietly, not making a sound at all, and wake me out of a sound sleep just by staring at me.
Why would he do that, though?
He did it because I think it was fun for him, too.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Then things of this nature just kept on, and these are only a few tiny samples here and there. Let's see. When I got into, during my mid-teens, we had lived in a different city. I won't state where. But my dad was in the school system. He'd been promoted from principal of one school to supervising principal of I think it was called West Area Schools or Central Area Schools of the county that we were living in Florida. And so we moved to another city and lived there for about 4 years. And then we moved back to the original city that I had been living in before that, the city where I was born. When I got into the high school on the city that we moved back to, when I mentioned things about ESP, psychic phenomena, I would get these typical, oh really? Kind of looks.
Yeah.
In the 60s, which is the period of time that this all was going on, the 1960s, at first, people treated psychic phenomena the same way they treat the UFO information up until just recent times.
Yeah.
And still do to some degree. If you mention that you saw a ghost, if you mention that you thought you had ESP,
oh yeah,
they'd give you this, oh really? That's interesting.
Well, they still do that as well,
Yeah, not as much as they used to.
In this country.
Yeah, but not like they used to. Where I went to high school, it became very natural for it to be talked about. Of course, Star Trek was starting to happen, and you have Mr. Spock with his mind meld ability and all this kind of stuff. Good sci-fi. And it was opening people's minds up a little more.
Mm-hmm.
But at any rate, as
the show had the first interracial kiss on television.
Oh yeah, sure did. It was great. And it was a hot kiss, too. I began becoming more and more interested in reincarnation about that time as well. I knew that I had come from somewhere else way off in space. I knew that it was the galaxy of Andromeda. My soul had come from there. I knew that there was one hellish war there. You can change the weather patterns on a number of planets. I knew there were crystal cities. Now this is way back before, what was it, Superman, the movie?
Yeah.
In the late 1970s, early, I think it was.
It wasn't any. In other words, you weren't getting any of this from any shows or nothing, anything like that.
Nothing. In fact, when I was younger than that, my dad had a piece of crystal, like outcropping from rock in his office.
Yeah.
And I would go hold it. It was a gift from another teacher.
Yeah.
Where he was principal at the time, and I would think, there's whole places where whole cities are made of this, and I used to live in those places.
Uh-huh.
I was so fascinated, and I tried to get closer just so it seemed like I was zooming in. I knew a hellacious war had happened, and that I came here to Earth to stop it before it could happen there.
Uh-huh.
In Andromeda. So this is a little of my background there. I also began becoming very, very interested in Atlantis and possible lives that I had there. And I became aware that I had lived a life in Germany. This gets kind of weird. A lot of what I'm saying does. What's new? I knew that I was working with the underground and that my uncle had organized the Gestapo. I knew that one of the things I was doing was helping people escape the Nazis, intellectuals and Jews escape the Nazis through Switzerland.
By yourself?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that in one of those efforts, I was gunned down by the Nazis.
Yeah.
All right. In my coat that I was wearing in that life when that happened,
Yeah.
I thought I had penned a note saying, "I have to stop my uncle, the horrible monster." Well, I was wrong about that.
Who was your uncle?
A man by the name of, if I can say it now, Herr, wait a minute. Hasselhausen, I think it was. He organized the Gestapo. I was his cousin, or not cousin, I'm sorry, his nephew.
Okay.
And so, as I told, and years later, as I told a medical secretary who worked at the Watson Clinic, very well-renowned, world-renowned place, she used to conduct metaphysics meetings in the evenings, and I'd go to them about once or twice a week. This is in the 70s. I told her about this experience. She called me up one day and said, "Bob, are you sitting down?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And so she related to me what she had been able to research and find out. There was a nephew of this guy who started the what am I trying to say?
Helped to organize Gestapo.
The Gestapo. And she said that you were helping people to escape Germany. And by the direct route that you traced on the map for me, which I had done a few evenings before on a map that she laid out in front of me. And then she said, "By the way, you're wrong about the note in your coat." And she said it wasn't penned. It was sewn. And it said, "I have to stop my uncle, the horrible monster."
How the fuck did she find that?
She went and did a lot of research at the library. She was good at it. I've had some interesting lives. During that lifetime, I also lived as an American sailor. I had a split life.
Hey, sailor. Hey, sailor.
Smacky. Anyway,
well, that was the life we were friends and as well. We came out of the Great Lakes.
Yep.
Military base, which is what is that, in Waukegan, just north of Chicago here. And we went out to we were to be shipping out on the West Coast somewhere.
We did.
And our boat was destroyed, and that was the end of us. And that was just one of our lives. We actually both had a split life going on at that time. And your split life was a German life, right?
Right.
And my split life, I was in Hollywood.
Yep. Well, you ended up there.
I'm not sure if we should even mention any of my stuff.
So, this is how things had progressed. Then came a really rough period of time where a number of loved ones passed on, like 5 loved ones in our family passed on within 1 year's time. My dearly beloved Tiger had cancer and had to be finally put to sleep. We got another Chihuahua dog by the name of Buttons. I often refer to him as the Antichrist or the Furious Fetus. I'm sure that before he was born, he was probably giving his mom trouble.
Oh my God!
But humor is good. One evening,
he was adopted.
Oh yeah, we adopted him from a puppy farm on the north side.
He probably had some.
No, not from a pound. From a puppy farm.
Well, he still could have had a traumatic childhood. to be such a messed up dog.
He really was. He did end up having edema of the brain, water on the brain. And we think that's from when he tried to jump off of the bed one time and didn't do it right and landed on his head.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. He screeched briefly and everything was okay after that. He seemed perfect. And then he started having these fits every so often.
Oh, my God.
And in between times, he'd have this look on his face. His eyes would glaze over, and then he'd growl, inhale growling and exhale growling.
Oh, my God.
And if he didn't like you, he'd come after you, stalking up your chest so he could bite your face if he could get to it.
Oh.
I used to have dreams of him being a vampire, I really did. But this one situation, my grandmother was quite ill. She was dying slowly from small strokes, one after another. She was staying in our house. Our next door neighbor came over to watch over because she was a friend of hers and ours. And the next door neighbor had some medical background. And my parents and I, just to give us a chance to get away and have a little time to do something else, we went to another location in Central Florida and had a meal about 20 miles away. And as we were eating, my mom says, I wonder how Buttons is doing. We all had grown used to whispering his name because that's the effect he had over us. And I'm looking over at my dad. My dad's looking at me, and what?
This means wrap it up. We're at the end of our time here.
Okay.
If I do this, if you can wrap it up in the next minute or two.
Okay, so we spent about 20 minutes making jokes about Buttons, and got to the point where we could just see pictures of this rat dog stalking past the Florida-Georgia border after the police and the army tanks that couldn't stop him. And then I said, yeah, maybe they'll drop a nuke on him. And my dad said, yeah, and then he'll just walk out, laughing about that and growling as he goes on. Even that wouldn't kill him.
Oh, my God.
So we threatened to send him to the Russians and have them pay us to take him back again. Anyway, got home that night and Button is staring at me, sitting on my bed and going, like that. That's a good place to stop this, don't you think?
I think so.